Hi there, I'm Andrew Munkres, and I run Lemon Fair Honeyworks here in Cornwall, Vermont, and I'm the current president of the Vermont Beekeepers Association. And we've been involved for a few years with a project to try and reduce the use of neonicotinoid seed treatments in Vermont, and we've encouraged legislation in the Vermont state legislature to try and restrict the use of neonic seed treatments, and where it went was to be kicked to a committee called the Agricultural Innovation Board. And we're now involved in a project to gather more information about the effect on Vermont honeybees of the neonics. So last year we collected pollen from hives. So this is pollen that the bees are collecting out in the landscape and bringing back to their hive. And we set up traps which remove some of the pollen from the bees' legs as they're bringing it back. And then we collect that, and it was sent to the UVM bee lab, which sent it off to Cornell to be tested for pesticide residue. And we did find about 21% of the samples had neonic pesticide residue, one of the big three that are used as seed treatments on corn and soybeans. So the bees are encountering neonics in the landscape. And all the levels we found, except for one, are pretty low, but the bees are affected at levels even lower than the levels that we found. So we were able to report these findings back to the Agricultural Innovation Board, and along with a significant body of research which shows the low-level sublethal effects of these neonic pesticides if the honeybees are exposed either as adults or in the larval stage. So this year, again headed up by the UVM bee lab, we're doing even more pollen collecting. It's become a citizen science project where beekeepers around the agricultural areas of Vermont are putting pollen traps on their hives and collecting pollen, and it will again be sent to the Cornell lab and tested for pesticides to see what sort of residual levels the bees are being exposed to. And that will hopefully further inform the Agricultural Innovation Board and the Vermont State Legislature as they make decisions to protect honeybees moving forward. Yep. Are you still running?
I'm still running.
Okay. So in terms of the neonic exposure, I got interested largely because as president of the State Beekeeping Association, I had a lot of beekeepers, members coming to me and telling me that they felt that they were having significant winter losses because of exposure to field crops. And I had, in my own experience, I had a mating yard which had been near a 120-acre hayfield. It was a beautiful spot. We used to have trouble with the mating nukes getting too strong over the course of the summer. We'd have to pull bees and frames of honey out of them as the season progressed because they'd be getting too strong. And the farmer passed away, and the land was bought by a neighboring large dairy farm, and the hay was plowed up and it was planted in corn, literally to within a stone's throw of the mating yard. And we went from having problems with how strong the nukes were getting to having a mating yard where the nukes never built up over the course of the whole summer, and we had fewer bees in the yard at the end of the summer than we had at the beginning. And we saw strange brood patterns where the queen would mostly be laying fine, but there were occasional spots where there was a drone cell, which usually indicates a poor mating, except that the queens had apparently mated well. There were plenty of drones. The weather was great. And talking with North Carolina State researcher David Tarpey, he says that the neonics can affect the sperm quality of the drones. And so one of the potential results of that would be a drone mating with a queen where some of the drone sperm is not viable, and you end up with the queen storing that non-viable sperm in the spermatheca, and it gets mixed in as the queen is attempting to fertilize eggs, and you get this strange, we call it a misfire brood pattern. And of course we can't sell those queens to somebody, so all those queens have to be pinched off and destroyed. So it's unclear exactly what the cause of this, and we don't have a direct correlation yet, but this is, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved with the pollen sampling, to see what we were being exposed to. The most frustrating thing about the whole situation is that the studies that have been done in an area very similar to Vermont, which have been done in Quebec just across the border, show that economically there's really no benefit to the farmer to using neonic seed treatments prophylactically. And what the VBA is recommending is that there be sampling done prior to the application of these uses of pesticide, because they are so toxic to honeybees at such low levels. And only if it's clear you are going to have a seed corn maggot problem in the field would you actually then plant treated seed. The second thing the VBA is pushing for is to always choose the least toxic pesticide. There's another entire class of pesticide that can be used as a seed treatment called the anthranilic diamides, and the diamides are much less lethal to honeybees. And if we assumed the exposure level would be the same in terms of the dust from the seed treatment or from guttation fluid or from pollen exposure to the honeybees, if the exposure was to diamides being used as treatment as opposed to neonics, I do not think we'd be seeing very many effects at all on the honeybees. So step one would be to use IPM and not use any neonic coated seed or any pesticide treated seed at all if you don't need it. And number two would be to choose the least toxic pesticide that's available at the time. And then we would like to see, the VBA would like to see the neonics phased out entirely within 2 or 3 years for seed treatment use, similar to what's been proposed and is currently under review in legislation in the state of New York.